Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. I hope everyone is safe and taking care. My name is Pranali Raut from Nuremberg, Messe, India, and I would like to extend a warm welcome to all of you at the A.B.I.S Knowledge Summit. Asia's Broadcasting and Infotainment Show, or A.B.I.S, comprises of the Broadcast India Show, SCAT Trade Show, and the Content India Show. At the A.B.I.S Knowledge Summit, we hope you have been enjoying our sessions over the last 2 days, and we look forward to bringing you some engaging discussions and interesting fireside chats today. This panel will be on OTT content production workflows. Let me introduce our panelists for today, starting with Mr. Vijay Venkataramanan. He's the Director of Post-Production at Netflix India. A graduate of the University of Southern California School of Cinematic Arts, Mr. Venkataramanan has begun his career in advertising. After finding his true passion in post-production, he worked for the next decade as an editor and post-production supervisor on feature films in India. After a successful stint at Amazon India, he now leads the post-production initiative for Netflix India. He's currently strategically leading efforts to build Netflix's first full-service live-action post-production facility in the world right here in Mumbai. Our next panelist is Mr. Mittal, freelance film editor. Based in Mumbai, India, and being involved with films for the last decade, Mr. Mittal has edited multiple feature-length fiction and non-fiction films, short films, commercials, NGO films, and documentaries. His work has traveled the world to various film festivals and has also been screened and commercially released in the country. He's a Filmfare Award nominee for his work on A Death in the Gunj, directed by Konkana Sen Sharma, and his latest feature film, The Sky is Pink, starring Priyanka Chopra and Farhan Akhtar, premiered at the 44th Toronto International Film Festival in 2019. Next, we would like to introduce Mr. Mithun Souza, post-production and post-supervisor at MotionLoop. With a career spanning multiple roles and responsibilities for over 16 plus years, Mithun Souza has dabbled with technology with a keen focus on the creative and producing aspects of the cinema business. He was deeply involved with the transition from film to digital acquisition in the early days with roles at Red Digital Camera and Assimilate, and also helped set up and run multiple award-winning post-production facilities. Lately, he is involved in post-production management services under the brand MotionLoop, where he is entrenched in post-producing, managing, and supervising 8+ titles for reputed production studios spread across the country. Moderating our session for today is Mr. Manoj Madhavan, editor of Broadcast and Film and Satellite and Cable TV magazine. Mr. Madhavan is a media professional with over 28 years in the media industry. He has been associated as editor with leading global technology magazines like Studio Systems, Cinema Systems, Pro Sound Systems, and Optical Disc Systems. He has handled multiple exhibitions and conferences in the entertainment technology sector in a career spanning more than 2 decades. Before I hand over to Mr. Madhavan, just a quick note to all our attendees today. We will be having a Q&A session, so please feel free to drop in your questions in the Q&A tab at the bottom of your screen. Manoj, the screen is all yours.
Thank you, Pranali. Thank you very much for the introduction. Welcome to all the panelists. The session today is OTT content production workflow. OTT content production workflow has undergone a major change with the onset of the COVID pandemic. Remote post-production has brought new dynamics to the entire post-production pipeline and workflows. So this session will look at the challenges and the advantages for OTT content, post-production, and what makes the post-production unique for OTT in the post-COVID era. So I would like to straight get into the session, and my first question would be, how has OTT production workflow evolved in the midst of the pandemic? I would like to first go to Vijay. What is your thought, Vijay?
Hi, thank you for having me here. I think as we entered lockdowns early in March 2020, we were only trying to solve for one thing, and that was continuity of work, right? Of course, we wanted to make sure that all crews, especially post-production crews, were safe, which is why the first order of business was pull everybody out of the facilities so that they can be safe in their homes. And once that was done, the second challenge, and I think all of us, my entire team, Mithun and his team, Manas, we were all involved in this together because we were all working on Netflix projects at the time, obviously, and really was how do we keep people working? for two reasons. One is obviously, the show needs to go on, um, and the business needs to continue. The films need to and shows need to get completed and delivered. And the other thing is people need to continue working so they can get paid. One of the biggest challenges around the pandemic was there were a lot of people in our industry, especially, who were unable to work, and as a result of that, generate income for themselves and their families. So these were the things that we were primarily trying to solve for at that time. So we resorted to what Indians do best, which is called jugaad, and we found every possible way to essentially ensure that work continues. And in that process, we started figuring out what certain challenges were and started addressing them as we went, as we went on with it. And I think the biggest challenge amongst all of that, one was the interpersonal nature and the collaborative nature of post-production. So especially in crafts like editing, where it's not really technical, it's about sitting together, two storytellers, the editor and the director or the showrunner, sitting together in one room and trying to tell that story. And how do we make sure that we are able to allow the editor and the director or showrunner to collaborate creatively? And that's where we started implementing virtual cutting rooms and using tools such as Evercast and various others, where people, the director could see the editor's screen real time, and they could video chat and try to kind of make it as collaborative as possible. And I think the next challenge after that, so after editorial, and was maintaining quality in other aspects of post-production. So ADR, or dubbing as we call it in India, it was a massive challenge, because obviously the ADR facilities were shut and actors were unable to travel to these facilities. So how do we do that remotely? And there was also a bit of recalibration of our expectations in terms of the technical quality of what we were trying to pull off at that time. And so how do we, yes, the quality is going to take a hit as we get into these kind of remote record, because you're not recording in a dead room, you're recording with makeshift equipment and things like that. And then eventually you get to a point where you have to get to an acceptable level of quality where it doesn't hamper the viewing experience for the person who's paying and watching this content. So, and again, color was a major challenge through all of that. How do we, we were able to move systems, and our vendor partners moved systems into colorists' homes so they could continue their work, but then reviews could not be done in calibrated environments and with calibrated equipment. So a lot of jugaad was happening. But I think over the following year and a half, a lot of these things slowly evolved and became better, and we found ways to do it a lot better. But I don't think in all of this, these collaborative workflows and whatever evolved over the pandemic is ever going to replace the good old ways of doing things, which is people getting together physically in one space, in a calibrated environment, and taking creative and technical calls.
Thank you, Vijay. Coming to you, Manas, as an editor, what is your take? How has the production workflow evolved in the pandemic?
Manas, you're on mute.
So, hello, you can hear me now?
Yes.
Well, the first thing that I learned the hard way was keeping a clean house and keeping a clean edit timeline was no mean feat altogether in one same day. So being a great homemaker and being an excellent creative person at the same time was extremely challenging. However, of course, we were obviously faced with an unprecedented situation, something that none of us have trained our lives for. So we were having to play catch up, right? All of us from like all trades actually. So it was pretty similar, how we were also negotiating and navigating through all of this. With of course, companies like Netflix getting into gear from the word go really helped us, deal with our initial insecurity of, what is really going to happen on the work front. So that really kept us calm and kept us focused as much as possible in the face of a pandemic. So the initial sort of hit was not felt as much. There is a common perception that editors mostly work sitting in an AC room in front of a computer, which is largely true as well, but they don't always work alone. So they do have to collaborate with a bunch of other people while they function. And say, for example, in our case, the project that we were on, I was collaborating with a couple of other editors as well. So it was challenging for all of us until just literally 2 days ago, we were all in one studio space and suddenly we were all in our respective homes and we were limited to a small Zoom screen like this. So the shift was immense. So starting from there, we just had to, stay focused on what at the task at hand actually. And I feel that in the last 2 years now we've seen 2 lockdowns, and we've now sort of played more than just catch up with whatever is happening and however our lives have been modified. Hopefully not for good, but for some time to come. I think that pandemic and OTT have had a very interesting sort of chemistry going now. That it's not just a sort of friction that has been created. I feel that, to be very frank, what with the OTT explosion and with the sort of how well the audience has received this platform, sitting wherever they are and consuming the content that we have been creating, not just in the last 2 years, but over a period of time, it has been really sort of rewarding as well. I feel that this OTT explosion, as we've been saying in the industry, has sort of ensured, for lack of a better word, livelihood for a lot of us for the times to come. And that I see as a very encouraging and positive, not change, but evolution in a way. So there is a lot of work happening now in India and internationally. A lot of content is being produced. Technology is evolving by the week now, where we stood last year March to where we are today, with multiple platforms. We've really expanded, and that is enabling all of us, technicians and filmmakers, every month to sort of encourage. We are being able to hold shoots using Zooms, and producers are being able to manage multiple shoots in different locations using technology. Post-production outfits are being able to manage a lot of work from wherever they are, and people are now. Initially, it was very challenging for all of us to sort of negotiate with that. A lot of us are still being very rigid about it, me included. But I think we are all learning and starting to see the benefits of it, of how this can help us move forward. So it's been a mix of both, and I think there is no reason for us to see the negatives of that. I mean, it's anyway so much negativity out there right now, with our lives being held ransom by this disease. So at least let's be positive and look forward to telling stories as well as possible.
Interesting, Manas. Coming to you, Mithun, you are a post supervisor as well as a producer, and you run a post-production outfit, MotionLoop. How do you look at this scenario, Mithun?
Thanks for having me, Manoj. It's good to be on
Pleasure, Mithun.
Vijay and Manas and the rest of the team. So, like Vijay and Manas said, I mean, it's been an interesting set of 2 years, to say the least, during this pandemic. Interesting because I think the key word that I picked up from what Manas and Vijay also said, and that's something that we're all learning to adapt to, like this. That is adaptation, right? Because for the longest time, all parts of our business was a collaborative process, but it was always in person. The key takeaway for all of us, at least the learning that we got through the 2 years that we spent in two lockdowns, or 2.5 years now, is has been just adapting to the new normal. Right from what we did at home, like Mana said, to what we deployed at work, being heavily entrenched in work during the lockdowns. We were fortunate to have our business continue, unlike some of the other businesses that had to shut down. It's been, to put it simply, there has been no stop to the work that happened in our business, thanks to the OTTs coming into our country and the amount of work that needed to get done and pushed out. Our business, if you noticed, across both the lockdowns, has actually flourished. We've had multiple releases on the OTT platforms, and people have had to have some sort of entertainment keeping them going at home, I guess. So that's something that we noticed was true across our business. We figured out ways to do things that were never done before, like Vijay mentioned. I remember running with a laptop and a bunch of cables to one of the actors' houses in Bombay at the peak of the pandemic, trying to get that ADR going for one of the shows that released back then. So things like that were all adaptations that we put into place. Having said that, technology has been really the breakthrough for us to enable half of our work to be done. Technologies that Adobe put together, Evercast, like Vijay mentioned, just all these interconnective options through Dropbox or various storage systems. AWS has been great. So we've deployed a bunch of solutions across the board for all parts of our business. Remote collaboration tools have just gotten better, I think, and that exponential growth that happened over the last 2 years has really, enabled people to be more productive, even if they're not in the same room together. One of the key highlights that I'd like to bring out is, just the remote collaboration tools for review and response, like approval. That was like we kept trying to figure out what was the best way to go about it, and tools just kept getting better through the pandemic. So we are fortunate in one way that these tools have gotten to where they are today, and at the same time, everyone's onus on responsibility of maintaining quality and delivery standards, that didn't fall off. We delivered some HDR shows. In fact, the first few of them that came out of the country through the first phase of the first pandemic, and it was happening for the first time in the country. So it was a new learning for everyone. And to be honest with you, I think we've come off for the wiser, the better, and the smarter now. And looking forward to the future, man.
Interesting. That's a very unique take, Mithun. Now, coming to some of the projects, I've heard that House of Secrets, Masaba, Serious Men, Little Things. These were some of the interesting projects which have, left a unique stamp. I would like to start with House of Secrets as a case study, and I would like to go to Vijay. Vijay, can you share your perception about this particular project?
Sure. I'm going to leave it to Mithun to talk about how they actually pulled it off, because he was the brains behind all setting up the collaboration on that one. But I think what was special about House of Secrets, it's an elevated documentary series. So for those who haven't seen it, it's quite an exceptional documentary series. And one of the reasons it's so great was also the kind of people that we worked with, and a great collaboration of minds and talent from India as well as from the US. Lina and Anubhav, who were leading that series creatively, obviously had this tremendous vision And Alok Devichand, who's the creative lead here at Netflix, was also very particular that the show get the best resources and the best creative minds associated to be able to deliver at that elevated creative Netflix documentary standard that has been set up over the last few years, for which we got Jim Haygood, who edited that film Fight Club back there, personal hero of mine. On board as an executive producer and also supervising editor. So we had Jim and a couple of editors in LA who were editing, as well as Namrata Rao, who was editing here in Mumbai, and all of these people working together. So you can't really tell who's edited what. It's quite beautiful, the way the entire project shaped up and all these wonderful talents coming together. So that's why House of Secrets is so special in terms of, especially with regards to the offline edit process, and and especially in documentaries, production is a very small part of how a documentary gets made, and it's predominantly it gets built in the edit, and that's often the most time-consuming part of making documentary, and especially series. So. I will bounce it off to Mithun now to kind of tell you a little bit more about how he pulled it off.
Mithun, it's all yours.
It was easy. It took a couple of days.
Oh.
No, I think Vijay is being kind. I mean, Netflix did help quite a bit in getting the show together. Like Vijay mentioned, we had some key A-listers join us on that project. I mean, Jim, series talent on the edit side. We had A.R. Ramanan as well, score a documentary series for the first time, I think, for Netflix as well. The score is beautiful. So from a setup standpoint, we got involved right from the get-go. Yamini Pictures was producing it in India. We were lucky to be involved in that project. Like Vijay mentioned, it was a post-heavy project, not a production-heavy project. Everything got compiled and brought together by the edit team, ably aided by Leena and Anubhav. So the plan for that project was always, it was always going to be a remote collaboration project, because we had people working from across the globe and also different cities. The timing was, again, I don't know if it's fortunate, unfortunate, but like I said, the pandemic hit us about the same time. A good thing that happened through that process was even the teams learned how to, navigate feedback sessions and whatnot, which is a core integral part of arriving at a lineup and then arriving at for the finer edits. Manas can speak a little bit about how that process goes about on any of our projects, but on this one especially, because we had a supervising editor like Jim, and we had Zach and Medaya and Namrata working with him. It was an all-round process, and like Vijay mentioned, you can't tell which episode is edited by whom or what segments are edited by somebody else. So it was a learning experience for everyone on the editorial side, and the tools just enabled us to do that effectively. We had a great bunch, and I can't take away credit from the unsung heroes who are the assistant editors and the associate editors. I mean, it was a mammoth undertaking, to say the least, to manage data between 6 locations, keep them all in sync, enable updates and reviews to happen in such a way that it's seamless to the main editors. Keeping all of that going was a challenge in itself. AWS and other tools helped with that, and then obviously working with Mr. Rahman and his team, and then bringing it all together with PM Satish and their team on the sound, brought it all together.
So permit me to ask you, Mithun, how many days did it take for this entire project to be?
I said a couple of days earlier. I don't know if I'm going to I don't think you can hold me to it, but it was a long drawn process. The edit took about 6 to 8 months, like it should on any documentary series, I would say. Post which we obviously got into finishing and finessing it. We have a couple of rounds with the studios as well that we normally go through. And those rounds take a couple of months, and then we go into finishing. So the overall process for a documentary in any scale or fashion, like Vijay said, elevated content is something that's new in our country, but it would take that period of time. It would take between 8 to 12 to 14 months to compile. This did take a little longer though, because we got hit by the pandemic. World was shut down in March 2020. Nobody could leave their house. So it did pause for a small period of time, but then we immediately rebooted as soon as we got all the workflows going.
Interesting. Manas, your take on the entire editing?
Yeah, to start with, I mean, I'd also like to thank all the office guys who used to shuttle drives for us or equipment whenever required. I mean, they were in these lockdown situations running around in this, on the streets. So it's not easy dodging the police alerts and all of that. I mean, to start with the first, as Mithun mentioned, the first challenge was to manage your team and manage, how we are going to sort of work together and streamline the process for exchanging anything with the directors, with the producers, and even Netflix. So to start, as I said earlier, we were all playing catch up. So ensuring that everybody is on point and maintaining the same sort of hygiene within the project and within the bins and folders that we usually create within the edit space, maintaining that and regularly checking that using various online tools that we have had. So that would definitely consume a certain amount of time, almost every few days or at least once a week, and sort of charting that out that, this is now something that we have to do regularly. And alongside that, also maintaining everybody's productivity, that all of us were negotiating with something or the other every day. Some people were living with their families, some people were on their own, and so just whatever that all of us had faced last year, maintaining that with the efficiency of work that we are running was the first big challenge I felt. And I think more than the last year's lockdown, the second lockdown hit us really badly. This time we saw much more, serious sort of loss of life and all around us. So that, I can speak for myself, that affected me mentally as well. So my own personal productivity had gone down this time, and I had to sort of convey that to my sort of team members, and they were all very positive. I mean, they were all very supportive of it. So these kind of challenges, continuously being creative and negotiating with these challenges was not easy at all. And if you speak to some of our writer friends or even musicians, they really face difficulties because with so much whatever was happening around was not easy. So having said that, we did get a hang of it after a point. And I must say in the case of Netflix, a couple of projects that we've been part of in the last year and a half, we found systems of regularly sharing work with them, and through different stages. We broke it down into stages of edits episodically, and they were very kind and prompt with their feedbacks regularly, and sort of we sat with the directors and sort of narrowed it down to what exactly needs to be done. And then we were given enough time, considering all these issues at hand, to sort of deal with those things. Flexibility was the key word here. I think we as an industry, as a post industry especially, became far more flexible than we've ever been. And I am very thankful for that to everyone involved, because that helped us deal with all of that. There was this unique thing that on one end, we were faced with these tragedies, so we were, very affected. But at the same time, all of us were very charged to be at work also. Because that sort of became a healthy distraction for us. So we were very, give us work. We are happy to do work, whatever we need, whatever time of the day, we are happy to. With Mithun especially, WhatsApp chats have gone till 1 in the night also. So, we've been at it non-stop So that has sort of kept our mental health stable as well, I feel. And then, of course, I think our biggest challenges came, as Vijay had earlier said, with the further post-production setups. When we were dealing with sound teams and VFX and BI, and the cross-checking of stuff with them, that became a fair challenge, because you needed to be together, in one space to view stuff, and you didn't always have a big screen at hand to sort of check. So quality control became a big challenge. And this time around, of course, systems were in place already, so we sort of got a better hang of it.
Interesting. A major role played by vendors, companies like Adobe, A.B.I.S has really, helped all the workflows to go on smoothly. So coming to you, Mithun, I understand Masaba, Serious Men, and Little Things were projects cut on Adobe Premiere. So please share some of your insights on that, on how effectively you all could use Premiere to edit these.
Yeah, I mean, so Premiere is relatively, I mean, in the OTT space, we were fortunate to have a lot of flexibility provided to us by, allowing all the editors to choose the platform of choice that they were most familiar with or that they were most comfortable with. India traditionally has used FCP7 to cut every single thing. In fact, FCP7 will probably lie on every editor's box that I know of. Given that, that it's a 12-year-old application that hasn't been updated, right? So it has its own challenges, and I'm a huge proponent of using metadata, streamlining metadata as much as we can, trying to make sure things can be handed off as conveniently as possible to the post teams, ensuring that stability and efficiency is maintained across the board. So we were lucky actually to have a lot of editors across all these projects. I mean, Manas has been great on that front. Vijay and the Netflix team have been great on that front to push adaptation of newer editing platforms. When I say newer editing platforms, I'm referring specifically to the uptake in the OTT side. That was something that we saw as a huge change, and Adobe is leading the charge right from the get-go with how flexible their tools were. And we have so many of our projects cut on Adobe. It just allows for seamless integration of all media, allows us to collaborate quite easily, keep from versions and translations intact. And not to say that we didn't have challenges with Adobe, but I mean, Manas and I dealt with a whole bunch of things initially as well with them. But the fact that they have such a great engineering team, they've been heavily involved with the broadcast side for so long, it made very easy a transition for an uptake in the OTT side when things came up as series and long format films or documentaries. So on that front, Masaba, Serious Men, Little Things, a whole bunch of other projects that are in production right now with us as well are all using Adobe technologies. Avid is a huge, proponent of their tool sets as well. They've improved their tool sets quite heavily over the course of the last couple of years, at least, to make these remote collaborations a lot more apparent. Coincidentally, I'm working on a project right now which is completely being edited on DaVinci Resolve as well. It's working seamlessly and efficiently. So the tool of choice for edit has mainly been driven by the editor's choice and what they're most comfortable with. But just these tools also adapting, to the needs of the hour, which is, to move media around efficiently, to keep it all in check. I mean, like most of us have spent some bunch of time doing post-production. You'll know that the job doesn't end when the edit ends, right? Like that's just the start of the process. There's a huge bunch of processes that go on post that need to be efficiently mapped out. And for us, for coming from the post management side or the post producing side, that aspect becomes one of the crucial things when we discuss with editors on why they shouldn't use FCP7 anymore. Happy to go with FCPX, but the other tools are obviously on FCP7 not catching up yet because that tool will never get updated. So on that front, it's been great so far. We've had a lot of the rudimentary steps taken care of. AI is becoming more and more prevalent in what we're trying to do. In fact, the recent tool set that Adobe launched, which was the live transcription tool, right? We actually ended up beta testing that on one of our projects to transcribe a whole bunch of documentary material, which requires transcription for paper edit on that project. And it worked quite seamlessly for all the English content. So it's been a learning experience to say the least, but fun because it's completely new for everyone to work remotely from home. Manas, you want to, I don't know if Manas wants to throw this to you as well, but yeah.
Yeah, Manas, any?
Yeah, I mean, I've been sort of loggerheads with all my editor friends with this Adobe Avid FCP war for many years now, because I've been using Adobe primarily for the last decade almost now. So I find it extremely intuitive and user friendly. That's my primary reason. And when I'm faced with even when you're faced with projects like even House of Secrets or stuff, I think they may have used Avid, but when you're dealing with a lot of archival material and this kind of stuff, Adobe is very, supports multi-format editing very convenient. So that has always enabled us, a lot of us editors, in a very smooth functioning over a period of time. And now they have stuff like team projects and all. So exchanging stuff amongst associates and assistants internally, that makes our life quite easy. So even going ahead in the post, when VFX material comes in, some on timeline, and all platforms allow that, but I find personally Adobe very smooth and convenient when dealing with the compositing stuff, etc., etc. So it's been quite a smooth journey, at least on that front. And I forgot to add one thing last time, and in fact it holds true in this case as well. What this pandemic did and how Zoom friendly we all became is that we were not only collaborating with international technicians very conveniently and very easily, whereas earlier, it would be difficult to get hold of them, especially in post, is that we were also very conveniently troubleshooting internationally this time. So, the connecting with Adobe engineers from US was, very easy, and the sort of streamlined a lot of our issues very early in the project. And again, thanks to a lot of these OTT platforms, they encouraged all of this, whatever it takes to speed up the process. So that it has really, in a very unique way, united all of us. No matter where we are sitting this time. So all of us came into being, in fact, there were follow-up calls or emails to Mithun or me from US asking, is everything running smoothly? Do you guys need any more help? So all of that was great fun.
Interesting. We understand that in the remote production environment, there have been many constraints and one had to do a lot of compromises, be it in the quality of sound and to some extent the final output. I would like to ask Vijay on this. Your take, Vijay, on the quality of sound and if the image also had suffered to some extent?
I don't think it suffered, right? I think somewhere along the way, all the teams did a great job of ensuring that the creative intent made its way into the final stream. I think there are certain areas where, yes, we had to adapt. So, I spoke about ADR, and I know, project that Mithun was supervising post on, which was Serious Men. There was this 9-hour, or was it 7 hours, 9 hours? I can't even remember. ADR session done over Evercast with Nawazuddin. And he was literally recording on an iPad and with a microphone that we had sent him, and then the director and the writer who were like giving him instructions over VC, and it was quite insane. But you're not in a dead room, right? So then that adds another layer where now the sound team needs to take that, and then the dialogue editor has additional work to clean up all of that and make it sound like it was actually recorded in an ADR stage. So I think it added a little more work, but we got to where we wanted to. Or at least we got fairly close to where we wanted to. Again, the reviews really. It wasn't that we couldn't finish. Like Mithun said, we delivered shows in HDR, shows and films. Most of them actually through lockdown were delivered in HDR. And the colorists were able to do what they had to do. It was just the reviews. So what actually happened was, and it's not a bad thing, directors had to place a little more trust on their imaging and sound HODs and say that, okay, you know what, I can see the translation on these devices that we're looking at. So they had to obviously sign off on color and sound of, they had to sign off on sound on stereo mix because, of stereo monitors and color of an iPad and things like that. And really the approach had to shift at that point of saying that, okay, let me now sign off basis how the audience is going to see it, as opposed to because of the inability to be able to actually see it in a calibrated environment, and said, I'm going to have to now trust my sound HODs, my mixer, my colorist, that in terms of what the actual sound and image quality is in the calibrated environments, which in my opinion wasn't a bad thing. I think leave it to the experts to kind of take those calls.
Artificial intelligence has augmented post-production workflow quite efficient. It's claimed that artificial intelligence efficiently organizes and manages content and allows for quick production of deliverables. Mithun, I would like to have your take on this.
I mean, my take would be quite contrary to that right now, at least, because I think AI and machine learning and all those tools are absolutely crucial to our business. The reason why I said it might be quite contrary is because I think, like any tool set, there'll be life cycles and changes that go through before it becomes usable in the real world. What I mean by this is there is a human element to anything that is creative, because nuancing and things like that are very unique to how human emotions play out. Having said that, there are some technical services that AI and machine learning can definitely assist with, and we've seen great uptake on that front. But the creative services are something that we are holding off on for the most part. I could give you a great example. I don't know how many of our participants may or may not be aware of this, but there's a company in LA that set up, the most complicated, or we would consider the most complicated part when I started my career in this business, which is color grading and finishing. A company set up a toolkit called Color Lab AI, which was meant to completely revolutionize how color grading took place, right? So they allowed you to use machine learning and AI to map out your grade across all sections of your film. Now, while there's been great uptake, and I'm following the forums quite closely and also the user groups quite closely, you will notice that for it to start perforating into the mainstream, it will take time, because just nuancing with the DP, or that interaction with the DP and the director, to bring about emotion and just the feeling of a certain scene, AI can't replicate that today, because that does require some amount of discussion. You're talking about a creative process that can, like I said, proliferate for technical services. I mentioned one of them earlier about transcription, for example. But I think a lot of these toolkits have to really go through some generations and life cycles before they are usable in a production workflow. I'm not familiar with too many of them. Whatever I've explored so far seems very nascent. I would still trust my entire film in the hands of a person like Manas versus IBM Watson. And I think, just coming from that standpoint, it will take some time before Watson can give me what Manas can.
Filmmaking is a creative and collaborative effort. Due to the pandemic, there has been a lot of changes which we have seen in the pre-production and post-production stages. What are the changes, Manav, that you have seen from an editing perspective and probably the post-production?
A lot of what we've already been talking about. One thing one thing that I could definitely talk about is, how we are becoming more conscious about how we are outputting our content now. For the multiple platforms that it is going to go for, and it's not just the theatricals that we were catering to literally a year and a half ago. Although having said that, we're really looking forward to theaters resuming their flow soon, and I'm itching to go back to a theater to watch the new Bond movie also. But a lot of us, even regular cinephiles, have invested in good home theater systems, or large screen TVs and stuff like that. Something that a lot of us have always desired, but thankfully now the pandemic allowed us the time to invest in it and watch. So a lot of times, a lot of us have been very clear that many consumers would have access to quality viewing platforms. At the same time, I think a large population still doesn't. So then, how are we, preparing material for them? And it starts right at the time of shooting almost, because are we taking that extra close up for that every moment? A lot of time on a larger canvas, you would largely hold it in a big wide shot. You would go for scale, you would go for expanse, etc., etc. But if you're watching it on a mobile or an iPad, how much of it are you being able to really catch? So then a lot of creative choices have been modified along along the way, and we have had to take options, and we have had to weigh our options as we are editing, as we are conceiving the project along the way. And even in mixing, I feel sound mixing, when will the dialogue be right up front, will the music take the center stage? There have been these kind of challenges along the way, and you can really, when you hear a Patal Lok or a Family Man or a Serious Man or a Little Things, they're all sort of weighed differently. They all sound different. So every creator is making their own choices. But still, all of it eventually has to come to the living room or bedroom as of now. So that has affected our creative decisions a lot. And again, learning and catching up and modifying our beliefs as we go along.
Interesting. I'll come to my...
Manoj, I want to just come in here and just add one more point to what Manas said, actually. We are taking all of what we're talking about on this call quite for granted. But if you actually think about it, right, a whole bunch of the OTT consumption, or what we've seen over the course of the last 2-3 years, is very new to our country. It's not like this is how we consume content before the pandemic hit us, or I would say before 3 years as well. So what I think, just to reiterate the point that Manas is making, I think this consumption pattern has also changed quite heavily. So all the adaptation that we've had to do across the board, whether it's the storytelling side or whether it's the production or post side of things, all of it has had to adapt to this new way of pushing media along, at least in our country. I mean, luckily OTT players like Netflix or Amazon have had a long-standing stay internationally. But in our country, it's relatively new, for us to have so much access to content. So our consumption patterns have changed. I've not had cable at home for the last 5 years. So it's something that will happen as a change, I think.
Yeah, like in addition, sorry, Manoj, that, we were discussing that we were all very kicked about Dolby Atmos, and how we would like to do Dolby Atmos for this theater or that theater or that. Now, I don't know, the conversation is still on, but the conversation has evolved that does it even make sense to do Atmos for a Netflix product or not, even though Netflix and these kind of platforms do allow that kind of technology viewing experience. But it does sort of play a role while we are conceiving something.
Interesting. We're coming to the last 8 minutes of the session. So I'll take a few questions. This I will address it to Vijay. The way a director or a DOP approaches each movie or shot has taken a seismic shift whether the movie is meant for the big screen or for the web. Vijay, your thoughts on that?
I'll echo what Manas said. Right, it's the creative decisions have often been influenced by the viewing medium, right? So when you are, and it doesn't only it doesn't only impact how you shoot or edit a film or a show. It also impacts how you write something. So when you're making a movie for people to watch in the theater, you are relying on a captive audience. So you're not fighting for the audience's attention. You already have it as a given from the beginning. They're already inside. You shut the doors, you shut the lights off. They're not looking at anything but that massive screen in front of them. But when you go into streaming, the game changes because now the screen is smaller, and it could be, you know, a 55-inch TV, it could be a 32-inch TV, or it could be something like this, right? And you have to really look at how is your story going to translate most effectively through this medium. And that with OTT, you've got the other part, with streaming platforms in general, you've got the other challenge that people have so much choice. So you don't have a captive audience. So it also impacts how you write something. You got to get to the crux of your story a lot faster. So for example, if you look at a very traditional Western 3-act narrative structure, and you can take a 90-page script and you break it into thirds, and you say, by the end of the first 30 pages, your first act should be over. You should have established your protagonist, their goal, and what is at stake. But when you're doing a film for streaming, you don't have the luxury of taking 30 pages to get to that point. You might have to get there between 5 to 10 pages. And that impacts the work of the editor to make sure that that happens in the first 5 to 10 minutes of the film. That then also has an impact on how the director and DOP frame their shots. As Manas said, can your story and can certain performances, which you might shoot very wide for a big screen consumption, you will have to go in a lot tighter, when people are watching on their phone or TVs. It will impact the choices an editor makes in terms of the kind of shots they use in the edit to be able to tell that story. I think technically, I don't believe it should make a difference in terms of the finishing standards, right? I think you can buy a 20,000 rupee Samsung phone today in India, which might have an HDR screen and has Dolby Atmos decoding. So you're going to see that kind of detail on the screen. So I don't think we need to step down the specs at which we finish at all. Dolby Atmos is not just about, yes, the immersive experience is a huge part of Dolby Atmos. Being able to hear the sound from all sorts of directions and where an object lies in the scheme of things, yes, that's a major part of Dolby Atmos. But also, there's that aspect to Atmos which is about the quality of the mix and the detail that you hear in the mix, right? And that's what you will get, of these kind of consumer devices. And understand that people are actually watching something this close, and the quality of earphones and earbuds and all of that has gone up tremendously over the last 3 years. I can buy a fairly low cost set of earphones today that sound pretty darn good. So now people are actually watching this close with sound that is right in their ears. So you actually have less margin for error. You have to pay more attention to your finishing standards. You have less leeway in terms of glitches and things like that. Your QC has to be stronger. So you get away with a lot less.
Interesting. I'll take the last question. The editing platform normally takes a lot of processing speed. So is internet speed been a major hurdle as far as remote production has been concerned? Either Mithun or Manas, either of y'all can take that.
Well, I was going to say a big thank you to all the internet providers and electricity providers of the country. The value of internet has gone many folds the last couple of years. It has been a challenge, I will agree, in India especially. And thankfully in Mumbai, we have a lot of high-speed providers also, but maintaining same speed standard that every sort of person's home or office has not been easy. So we've sort of adjusted ourselves to the lags that we've experienced over time. Real-time playback is still a challenge, I would say, while we are editing. So, real-time 24 or 25 FPS playback viewing experience for the filmmaker or the producer while I edit is still not something that we've 100% cracked, but definitely we've negotiated, navigated through that along the way.
Thank you, Manas. I think we are closing to the end of the session. I would like to thank all of you for your participation in this session and a very interesting panel discussion.
Thank you for
I
having
would
me.
now like to hand it over back to Pranali for the closing comment.
Thank you so much, everyone. I think Vijay, Manas, Mithun, Manoj, it's been a truly insightful session, and I think people have got a good perspective as to what exactly the production workflows are for the content that we are seeing over OTT in these days. So yes, thank you all of you once again for giving us your time and this interesting panel.